আসসালামু আলাইকুম সবাইকে। সবাই কেমন আছেন? আমি অনেক দিন পর আসলাম ভিডিও নিয়ে। আজকে ডিসকাস করব টি.এস ইলিয়টের দ্য মেটাফিজিক্যাল পোয়েটস নিয়ে। এটার সামারি বলার ট্রাই করব। আমি অনেক ছোট মানুষ, আমার কোনো কিছুতে কোনো ভুল হয়ে থাকলে প্লিজ সেটা ক্ষমা সুন্দর দৃষ্টিতে দেখবেন। Eliot says the Metaphysical Poets was first published as a review of J. G. Gregerson's edition of metaphysical lyrics and poems of the 17th century. But the essay is much more than a mere review. It is a critical document of much value and significance. It is one of the most significant critical documents of the modern age. It has brought about a revaluation and reassessment of interest in these poets who had been neglected for a considerable time. Eliot has thrown new light on the metaphysical poets and shown that they are neither quaint nor fantastic but great and mature poets. They do not represent the digression from the mainstream of English poetry but rather a continuation of it. It is in this essay that Eliot has used for the first time the phrases dissociation of sensibility and unification of sensibility, phrases which have acquired worldwide currency and which ever since have had a far-reaching impact on literary criticism. Eliot examines one by one, with suitable illustration, the characteristics which are generally considered metaphysical. First is the elaboration of a simile to the farthest possible extent, to be met with frequently in the poetry of Donne and Cowley. Secondly, there is a device of the development of an image by rapid association of thought, requiring considerable agility on the part of the reader. That is a technique of compression. Thirdly, the metaphysicals produce their effects by sudden contrast. Thus, in the line, a bracelet of bright hair about the bone, the most powerful effect is produced by sudden contrast of the association of bright hair and bone. But such telescoping of images and contrast of association are not a characteristics of the poetry of Donne 1. It also characterizes Elizabethan dramatists like Shakespeare, Webster, and Middleton. This suggests that Donne, Cowley, and others belong to the Elizabethan tradition and not to any school. The dominant characteristics of Donne's poetry are also the characteristics of the great Elizabethans. Eliot then takes up Dr. Johnson's famous definition of metaphysical poetry, in which the greater doctor has tried to define this poetry by its faults. Dr. Johnson in his Life of Cowley, points that metaphysical poetry, the most heterogeneous ideas, are yoked by violence together. But Eliot says that to bring together heterogeneous ideas and compelling them into unity by the operation of the poet's mind is universal in poetry. Such unity is present in the poetry of Johnson himself. The vanity of Huma wishes, the force of Dr. Johnson's remark lies in the fact that in this view, the metaphysical poets could not sorry the metaphysical poets could only yoked by violence dissimilar ideas. They could not unite 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 them or fuse them into a single whole. However, this is not a fact. A number of poets of this school have eminently succeeded in uniting heterogeneous ideas. Eliot quotes from Herbert Cowley, Bishop King, and other poets in support of his contentions. Therefore, he concludes that metaphysical poetry cannot be differentiated from other poetry by Dr. Johnson's definition. The fault which Dr. Johnson points out is not there, and the unity of heterogeneous ideas is common to all poetry. Eliot shows that Donne and the other poets of the 17th century were the direct and normal development of the precedent age, and that their virtue were something valuable which subsequently disappeared. Dr. Johnson has rightly pointed out that these poets were analytic. They were devoted to too much analysis and dissection of particular emotional situation. But Dr. Johnson has failed to see that they could not unite into new wholes the concept they had analyzed. Eliot shows that their special virtue was the fusion of the heterogeneous material into a new unity after dissociation. In other words, metaphysical poetry is distinguished from other poetry by unification of sensibility, and subsequently dissociation of sensibility overtook English poetry, and this was unfortunate. The great Elizabethans and early Jacobeans had a developed unified sensibility which is expressed in their poetry. By sensibility, Eliot does not mere mean feeling or the capacity to receive sense impressions. He means much more than that. By sensibility, he means a synthetic faculty, a faculty which can amalgamate and unite thought and feeling, which can fuse into a single whole the varied and disparate often opposite and contradictory experiences. The Elizabethan had such a sensibility, they were widely read. They thought on what they read, and their thinking and learning modified their mood of feeling. Eliot gives concrete illusions to show that such unification of sensibility, such fusion of thought and feeling is to be found in their poetry of Donne and the other metaphysical poets. But it is lacking in the poetry of Tennyson, Browning, and the Romantic poets. After Donne and Herbert, a change came over English poetry. The poets lost their capacity of uniting thought and feeling. The unification of sensibility was lost. The dissociation of sensibility after set in after that the poets can either think or they can feel. They are either intellectual poets who can only think, or there are poets who can feel. The poets of the 18th century were intellectuals. They thought but did not feel. The romance of the 19th century felt but did not think. Tennyson and Browning can merely reflect or ruminate. Eliot says Tennyson and Browning are poets and they think but they cannot. Eliot says Tennyson and Browning are poets and they think but they cannot feel their thought as immediately. Immediately the odor of a rose, a thought to Donne, was an experience. It modified his sensibility. When a poet's mind is perfectly equipped for its work, it is constantly amalgamating disparate experience. The ordinary man's experience is chaotic, irregular, and fragmentary. The latter falls in love or reads Spinoza, and these two experiences have nothing to do with each other or with the noise of the typewriter or the smell of cooking in the mind of the poet. These experiences are always forming new wholes. In other words, the metaphysical poets had a unified sensibility which enables them to assimilate and fuse into a new whole's most disparate and heterogeneous experiences. They could feel their thoughts and intensity as the odor of a rose. That is to say, they could express their thoughts through serious imagery in his poems. Donne expresses his thought and ideas by embodying them in sensuous imagery, and it is mainly through the imagery that his unification of sensibility finds its appropriate expression. Eliot then proceeds to examine the close similarity between the age of Donne and the modern age, and the consequent similarity between the sensibility of the metaphysicals and the modern poets. The metaphysicals are difficult, and the poets of the modern age is also bound to be difficult. Hence, the modern poets uses conceit and methods very much similar to those of the metaphysical, who also live in complex and rapidly changing time. Like them, the modern poets also transmulate ideas into sensation and transforms feelings into thought or state of mind. Eliot's comments apply not only to Baudelaire and Laforge, but to his own poetry. In the other words, Donne and the other metaphysicals are in the direct current English poetry, and the modern poets are their direct descendants. This current flows direct from the Elizabethan age rightly up to the modern age only, and unfortunately this country was broken for some time under the influence of Milton and Dryden, who are great masters of language, but not of the soul. The poet has different faculties and sensibilities. He must achieve a unification of his sensibilities and must express his unified sensibility in his poetry. Only such a poetry would be complete, but it would be complex and difficult. The metaphysicals are, as well as the moderns, have this complexity and also the completeness and maturity. So this is the end. এটা হলো টি.এস ইলিয়টের মেটাফিজিক্যাল পোয়েট্রির সামারি দেওয়ার আমি ট্রাই করেছি. সো ইফ ইউ থিঙ্ক দ্যাট it would help you, so then turn the black thumb blue, subscribe to my channel, go and like my page, my Facebook page. Link is down below in the description box. Thank you.